Hill, Brennan, Comey, and Hillary Clinton could face indictment. The independent CIA director suggests Hillary Clinton could face criminal indictment. There are other articles as well. There's a grand jury underway right now, maybe numerous ones pertaining to the Durham probe evidence, the Durham annex, and Clinton's testimony during the Durham probe. That's within the statute of limitations. And conspiracy, by the way, the statute of limitations end only when the conspiracy ends. The statute of limitations begin or are relevant only when the conspiracy ends, and they're still stating that Russia and Trump worked together, which is a complete lie. There was not a shred of evidence, not one piece of evidence that showed that President Trump colluded or helped interfere in 2016. Anyway, hit subscribe to my super chat. Thank you. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. These are the declassified documents in the Durham probe annex. We'll get to that in a second. This is why Clinton will be indicted. This is the CIA director explaining exactly why Clinton and others, their indictments are imminent. Hit subscribe.
John Lee Ratcliffe worked on this in Congress and again as DNI and joins us now. Welcome, Director. I sat beside you as Comey and Brennan were questioned for hours about Russia collusion. They never once mentioned this was a Clinton campaign plan. They knew it. They were co-conspirators. Would this ever have come out had you not declassified Brennan's notes and then Durham's annex? And for our viewers, what's new in the Durham annex?
Well, Trey, think about that there was intelligence from foreign intelligence services that one U.S. presidential candidate was trying to frame another candidate for treason, claiming that he was an agent of a foreign power, an agent of Russia. And that intelligence was never shared with you or I as members of congressional oversight committees on intelligence. But for the good fortune of me being able to find John Brennan's notes and declassify that secret may have been hidden forever. But I was able to provide that to John Durham, and you see some of that in his annex that was declassified this week. And so what you learned in this annex that many people didn't know before was details of that Hillary Clinton plan and how it included groups like the Soros Foundation and the role that the FBI played. So before all of this started, Trey, what we did know was this, that on July 31st of 2016, the FBI did something as shocking as it was unprecedented. They opened a criminal investigation into a nominee for president, a candidate for President Donald Trump, something that had never been done before. But what you learned in John Brennan's annex this week was 6 days before that, Russian intelligence predicted that's exactly what would happen, that there was a Hillary Clinton plan and that the FBI would pour oil on the fire of a firestorm that would consume the country for the next 3 years.
So it's going to take a couple of months. There's a grand jury underway. And it is exactly, it's a grand jury that focuses on conspiracy statutes pertaining to Clinton and others. Everyone involved in the Steele dossier committed a crime. Now, the rebuttal is, well, that's not true. It took a while for Bernie Madoff to be investigated and then indicted and then imprisoned. It took a long while. I think longer than Clinton, actually. What Bernie Madoff did during a Ponzi scheme was legally buy and sell stocks, legally open up retirement accounts. Everything he did on the ground level was seemingly above board and legal. In aggregate, it was a Ponzi scheme, and not only highly illegal, but destroyed retirement accounts and lives. And so Clinton purchased the dossier legally. She paid a Federal Election Commission fine, but everyone involved in filtering the dossier into the U.S. government, including Madam Secretary, and everyone who worked with Comey and Brennan and Clapper, the indictments will hit everyone. They will all be leveled with conspiracy statute indictments.
So think about that, Trey. Either the Russians made the greatest prediction or the luckiest guess of all time, or this intelligence was real. And of course, the answer is this intelligence was real. And how do we know that? Well, subsequently, under penalty of perjury, while under oath, Hillary Clinton's own campaign manager confirmed that there was such a plan and that Hillary approved it. So that, I think, in addition to what you learn about the FBI's role that came out this week, was that this intelligence that was so shocking that John Brennan brought together the National Security Council, President Obama, Vice President Biden, Clapper, Comey, Susan Rice, and briefed them on this intelligence about a Hillary Clinton plan to frame Donald Trump, and that the CIA made the required referral of that to the FBI to investigate that as a counterintelligence matter. And as John Durham found, the FBI buried it. They didn't open a file. They didn't assign an analyst. They didn't investigate it all. They just spent the next few years, really, amplifying the lie of Hillary Clinton's Steele dossier and burying the truth of her plan to frame Donald Trump. It is the greatest political scandal that we hopefully will be the last that we'll see in our lifetime.
They're not going to be able to hide behind bureaucracy and process and a guess or a hunch that, well, we just thought we had to investigate. That is defrauding the U.S. That is defrauding the American people. You can't. That's 18 U.S. Code 371. There are other statutes as well. You can't simply say, gosh, I think this Democrat is working with another country. We have a dossier purchased by Republicans. Could you imagine if Trump and Rudy Giuliani had purchased a dossier that said that Clinton or Harris or Biden or President Obama or anyone Democrats elect was in a Moscow hotel room? They would say, rightfully so, that it was purchased by their direct political rivals. And if Rudy Giuliani and President Trump were able to filter that through the United States government and get the FBI and CIA and everyone to investigate, and the DOJ, could you imagine what the Washington Post and New York Times would do? You think BuzzFeed would publish a dossier about Hillary or Joe Biden in a Moscow hotel room? I don't think so. But with Trump, that's what they did. All of it was criminal, and these fall under the conspiracy statutes.
Speaking of amplify, Director, I want you to amplify a point that you just made, because you and I both know John Brennan, the New York Times, they're still in denial. They're claiming that none of this has been verified.
Well, they have to, Trey. They have to, because to do otherwise would be to confess their guilt. My critics in this regard, Brennan and Comey and Clapper, they said I was wrong about there was no Russia collusion. They said I was wrong that Hunter Biden's laptop was real. Of course I was right. I was telling the truth. Our intelligence reflected that, and the same is true here. This intelligence is real. And for Comey and Brennan and Clapper to say otherwise would be to confess their guilt, to say that they gave false testimony, that they misled Congress, that they obstructed justice. So they have to put up these straw man arguments saying, well, we stand by our assessment that Russia meddled in the 2016. Well, that wasn't their argument. Their argument was that this was unprecedented, that Donald Trump was potentially committing treason, that he was an agent of a foreign power. And so, they have to take that.
According to media and Democrats, Trump was an agent of another country, yet it was Clinton that had private secret servers where the first 3 months of her emails are missing. Half of the emails were deleted by her attorneys, and classified data, top secret intelligence, SAP intel, was illegally transferred onto 2009, 2010 BlackBerry phones and secret servers. It's impossible to do so. If Trump had secret servers, they would be accusing Trump of selling information, classified data secretly to the Russians and everyone else. But Clinton had servers, and of course, God forbid, if it wasn't about yoga, you should never have been born. You couldn't even speculate as to why it was about almost certainly hiding donors and Clinton Foundation money and donors. That's part of the reason I wrote about that. But anyway, it's almost certainly, I'm not accusing Clinton of owning servers specifically for that, but to speculate, it's almost certainly to hide donor information, and other things. That's why you would own secret servers. What was the reason Clinton owned secret servers? Okay. If Trump owned secret servers, the New York Times and Washington Post, MSNBC tomorrow would say Trump owned secret servers to sell nuclear secrets. Trump sold nuclear secrets to the world through his secret servers. That's exactly what they would say.
Point, and to a point of the New York Times and the Washington Post, the same thing. They don't want to admit that they wrote thousands of false stories, so they don't want to give back the Pulitzer Prizes that they gained for writing those false stories. So they're doing it to do anything other than to try and fight this and say that it's not real would be to admit their guilt, and to admit they were wrong, and to admit that they deliberately misled the American people, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah, they also might want to read Hillary Clinton's campaign manager's sworn testimony, because he admits what you just said. They deny it, but we'll see what they say when they get under oath. Is there more to come from either you or FBI Director Patel? Are there more shoes to drop that we should be looking for?
Yeah, there are, Trey. So, people need to understand that, there is no Russia collusion hoax file cabinet at the FBI or at the CIA. We have to look for these documents, sometimes that are well hidden. You have to go trace through emails and look for signs and clues that would point you to. That's how I found John Brennan's notes. And
I think President Obama is helping President Trump and Ratcliffe and others to indict Clinton, to indict Brennan, Comey, Clapper, all of these people. The second Clapper was asked years back on CNN, well, why did you do all of this if there was no collusion? Mueller found no collusion. Well, President Obama tasked us with this, and we did it because of President Obama. That's what James Clapper said. They're all going to blame President Obama under oath or during trial. So it behooves President Obama to actually help President Trump. Nobody believes that's taking place. People think I'm nuts, but I think to speculate, I think that it's rational and logical. He circumvents criminal liability as being the president when all of this started, and he takes control fully of the Democratic Party from the I'm With Her crowd.
that's how we found additional documents. I've talked with FBI Director Patel. He and I will be declassifying additional documents that show just how sinister the FBI was in, amplifying Hillary Clinton's Steele dossier as real and credible to be included in the intelligence community assessment. But also in how they buried the counterintelligence referral memo that I mentioned before, how they went to great lengths to try and keep that out of the intelligence community assessment. So there will be more to come, and I think that people should expect that the Trump administration will continue to shed transparency and light and truth, again, because, Trey, there is no question, this was the greatest political scandal of our lifetime. No one wants to see this happen again.
In addition to the auto pen scandal, which we'll talk about again this evening, almost certainly, or maybe some other things we'll talk about in the live stream this evening. Hit subscribe if you're new. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. We will have a segment, a new one, right after this. And to my super chat, thank you. Let's continue.
And it derailed our country. It derailed President Trump's presidency, his first 4 years in office. And it really is a stain on our country that should never happen again. And Donald Trump is committed to making sure that it doesn't.
Generational damage is what I think was done, Director. But thank goodness that you found the Brennan notes. To your point, they're not like laying in a file cabinet. You got to go looking for them. And I do wonder, you're too modest to comment, but I do wonder if you had been picked to be the FBI director instead of Chris Wray, would it have taken a decade for this to come to light?
So that was the Durham probe annex, in addition to Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, declassifying all the information on Brennan. His indictment is imminent, and others. Check this out.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true.
So if somebody's sitting right there, man, they got.
It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency.
So for the record also, Politico published an article saying that they got the man they always wanted. The Clinton campaign literally wrote that they wanted to elevate Donald Trump. They wanted to elevate Trump. We know this from the WikiLeaks campaign emails that were published in The Guardian, the New York Times, Washington, but everywhere. Okay, everywhere. They were publishers. And the email showed that Hillary Clinton wanted Trump. The Clinton campaign wanted Trump. Then when they lost, then they changed their tune, and it was, oh my God, Russia wanted Trump. But the whole thing was so fabricated that before they lost, they actually wanted to elevate Donald Trump because they thought that he was too extreme.
In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department.
So where's the investigative journalism regarding the Clinton Foundation? There was one great article in 2015 on Uranium One in the New York Times. After that, none of the investigative journalists at the Washington Post, the New York Times, anywhere investigated Hunter's laptop, It's the New York Post, the Daily Mail that does the investigative journalism. But it's always about Trump's taxes, and you have rampant criminality with top secret intelligence on servers, or Hunter's laptop, which was total bribery and graft. That's why he got pardoned. Or the auto pen pardon. Could you imagine if Trump pardoned people via auto pen and the Republican Party kicked Trump out because of cognitive issues? Could you imagine? Could you imagine if President Trump behaved in the manner that Biden and Clinton and others, private servers, laptops, auto pen, kicked out of the political contest or president? They would never allow that. There would be investigative journalism. Everyone would turn into Sherlock Holmes. But that's why people don't trust media. Media covers and goes to bat for the Democratic Party, and it's obvious. It's obvious.
They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump.
Do you think
On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request.
Per the president's request, I believe President Obama ultimately, either now or at some point, will help President Trump. Because if you looked at Trump and Obama during Jimmy Carter's funeral, they were friends. They're friends. They're part of a club that in world history, they're part of a club. That's just speculation on my part.
The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts, using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards.
So Tulsi Gabbard is brilliant here, and this is how the conspiracy statutes will be. This is why they will be leveled against Clinton, Brennan, Comey, and others. There's already a grand jury and a DOJ probe, criminal probe, looking at conspiracy statutes, 18 U.S. Code 371 and all the other statutes. They used substandard intelligence reporting. They didn't have any intelligence. The intelligence that they had showed that there was no link between Trump and Russia. If anything, there was a greater link between Clinton and Russia from the Uranium One deal and from everything that DNI Director Gabbard is saying. So Trump did not have private servers. Clinton and I'm like a hologram of 2016. Okay, 2016 is we haven't as a country like surpassed 2016. We're still living in that year. Clinton had servers with top secret intelligence on them. Comey covered that up, then wrote a Comey letter. That's the reason Clinton lost, or one of the main reasons, in addition to President Trump being very popular throughout the country, a lot more popular than media or Democrats. And then they cheated Bernie Sanders all the while this was taking place. The Democratic Party, the beginning of the implosion took place 10 years ago. They still haven't come to terms. They just cheated Biden last year. They still think that having a show primary that isn't functioning or valid or legitimate, they still think that's fine. They haven't even come to terms with the fact they don't even have a functioning primary. But there was no intelligence, and simply saying, well, we just thought it was. There are whistleblowers. Already there are whistleblowers. There's declassified documents. There's not just breaking protocol, illegal behavior. They used their post. It is illegal to use your government post to set up and frame political adversaries. That's exactly what they did. There was never a shred of evidence that Trump worked with Russia or colluded with Russia. Russia didn't even change one vote. Not even one vote was altered, according to the NSA. And Clinton's campaign wanted to elevate Trump, according to their own emails. The entire thing was fabricated with the Steele dossier. Once they funneled a dossier purchased by Clinton into the U.S. government, everyone who touched that thing or knew about that thing would eventually be indicted, and they'll eventually be indicted and many convicted and sent to prison for funneling a dossier purchased by Clinton to set up and frame Trump. There was no evidence and no intelligence.
Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was quote-unquote unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, "We don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected." Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, "We assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him." End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today.
So it was never 17 intelligence agencies. It was 3. And the NSA gave moderate confidence. Okay, these were confidence assessments. They were never statement in fact. And the grand jury right now, it's going to take either 2, 3, 4 months, likely by March. I mean, the indictment is essentially already written, but it'll be official in 3, 4 months.
Today shows the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true?
So John Brennan is going to turn on Hillary Clinton. They'll all turn on Hillary Clinton, and they'll say, well, I didn't want to use the dossier, and now we have information stating that Brennan knew it was false and still used it. So the Durham probe ended in 2023, or late 2022, early 2023. Durham interviewed Hillary Clinton and John Brennan. At that time, they could never have imagined that President Trump, thank God, moved his head, and that firefighter lost his life that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, protecting his family like a hero. He was a hero. But thank God President Trump moved his head. They could never have imagined that Trump would move his head, thank God, out of the way and live. Okay? They never imagined that Pam Bondi would be the attorney general, that Kash Patel would be the bureau chief, that John Radcliffe would replace Brennan, and that the great Tulsi Gabbard would replace James Clapper. They all have amusing ways of communicating. James Clapper was the ODNI chief. They had an entire system protecting them. That system doesn't exist anymore. Clinton and others almost certainly know that they will be indicted. They don't care. They eat indictments for breakfast. She'll run for president while indicted, even convicted. And it won't be convicted of 30 different hush money payments to Stormy. Oh my God. That wasn't even a crime. We explained that last night. The Supreme Court's going to overturn that. But let's continue. The apparatus protecting all of these wonderful, morally superior Democrats, the apparatus is no longer there. It's like going into a town that you ran. You had the judges, you had the police, everything in your pocket, and now the entire town is run by the people that you tried to hurt.
Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential elected. election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome."
James Comey wrote the Comey letter influencing the outcome more than anyone. And when he wrote the Comey letter, he testified under oath to Dianne Feinstein that Uma Abedin was forwarding classified data to Anthony Weiner's laptop. He probably couldn't touch that laptop with a hazmat suit. But apparently, Uma Abedin, according to James Comey, was forwarding classified data from Clinton's computers to Anthony Weiner. That's why he wrote the Comey letter. And he still couldn't, and Sherlock Holmes still couldn't find intent. Inherent in owning private servers is the intent to hide information from the American public and the government. It's not rocket science, but let's continue.
This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment. That leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic.
So there is a grand jury probe right now on all of this, and the indictments are basically certain.
Today's show with some big breaking news, and we're going to go straight to Fox News correspondent David Spunt for the details. David.
Well, Will, good to be with you. This is coming out of the Justice Department. Fox News can confirm that Attorney General Pam Bondi today signed an order directing an unnamed U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to the country of Russia. Now, Fox News reviewed the one-page order just hours ago signed by the Attorney General. A source familiar with the probe confirms this as well, while a DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on this report of an investigation. Fox is told Attorney General Bondi is taking the referrals from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The spokesperson says that Bondi believes there is, quote, clear cause for deep concern, end quote, and a need for the next steps. Now, this move, Will, comes just a couple of weeks after the Director of National Intelligence, you see her right there, Tulsi Gabbard, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department regarding what she says proves there was a conspiracy to undermine Trump's candidacy and later his first term in office. Now, to be clear today, there are no charges that have been filed, no indictments. This is incredibly early in the process. What we have here is taking evidence the Justice Department believes it has to a grand jury to secure an eventual indictment or indictments. We don't know exactly where the grand jury will meet. We don't know who will go before the grand jury, and that's by design, because grand juries determine if there's enough evidence to indict, and grand juries are secretive in the American legal system, so it's normal not to know all of the answers. Again, the DOJ declining on any comment regarding this investigation. But, Will, big news, this was signed by the Attorney General Pam Bondi today to take this evidence of an alleged conspiracy to a grand jury with the hope to get an indictment or multiple indictments.
You've seen is big news, David, and congratulations to you. Excellent reporting on being first on this order signed today by Attorney General Pam Bondi. I understand it is a one-page order, which you have been able to review. Fox News has been able to review. I'm afraid I'm going to ask you some questions that need to be asked, but we won't yet know the answer. So let's start with the one that everyone watching at home is interested in. Who or what names might be the target of this grand jury?
Well, that's a great point. We don't know. We know that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has mentioned the names John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Clapper, who had the job before her. But I want to be very clear on the air. We don't know if their names are going before the grand jury.
Almost certainly, it'll be Hillary Clinton, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and everyone involved in disseminating and filtering the Steele dossier through the U.S. government. The U.S. government taking the dossier Clinton purchased was an illegal act by everyone involved.
For anybody that has, talked about former President Barack Obama seeing charges, we're told by multiple law enforcement sources that's not going to happen because of the immunity that he enjoys as a former president because of the Supreme Court decision last year that came to actually benefit current President Trump. So while we don't know the names, we know that those are possible names, and we know the Justice Department is serious enough and believes that it has enough evidence to take this to a grand jury. If I may just add in here, a few weeks ago, the Attorney General announced a strike force to go through some of these documents, and within a couple of weeks feels that she has enough evidence to go forward to this grand jury. So it directs an unnamed federal prosecutor to take this evidence to a grand jury, but the name of that federal prosecutor not clear at this moment.
Okay, just a couple more quick questions, David.
Sure.
Sorry to push the limits of your knowledge, but I want to make sure that we address all the things that are not only in your report, but in everyone's mind as well. The name, as well, in addition to Clapper and Brennan, that people will be wondering about will be Hillary Clinton. I understand yet we do not yet have those names. We'll be waiting to hear what names are in that referral to a grand jury. The next thing everyone will want to know, David, is what are the potential charges?
Well, the potential charges, and I want to use the word potential, would be lying to a federal official, which is a felony.
So the Durham probe, the Durham probe was within the 5-year statute of limitations. Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, and others involved in the dossier were interviewed by John Durham. John Durham deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He's awesome.
To do so if you lie to an FBI agent or you lie to another federal official, there could be charges involved with there, and I'm told those could be the most likely. That's something that we saw in the John Durham investigation. He was the former special counsel that was appointed by then Attorney General Bill Barr, and those are the types of charges that he used in his cases. He actually lost both times in court, but he did secure a plea deal with a former FBI attorney for falsifying a document. So those seem to be, or that seems to be, when I say those, I should say that because that's just one charge. But that's the charge in talking to sources that people have been eyeing for weeks. But this initial letter signed by the Attorney General that we reviewed does not say anything about specific charges. It just directs an unnamed prosecutor, hey, you have jurisdiction that's out of your normal jurisdiction. You can go anywhere in the United States and you could bring this evidence before a grand jury.
And a grand jury will come back with formal charges, a formal indictment. But a prosecutor, whoever that may be, as you point out, can and should make suggestions to a grand jury on which way they decide the evidence points. Ultimately, they decide whether or not there's probable cause for an indictment. Last question for you, David.
Sure.
The one-page order, which you have reviewed, suggests it is an unnamed prosecutor, but it seemed to open up, and I'm listening to you intently here, it seemed to open up potential jurisdiction to anywhere that seems appropriate to that prosecutor. So
hit subscribe to this channel if you're new. There is a chance that Lindsay Halligan, although I do think that Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice know the protocol a lot better than people online or legal experts, because they're all lawyers too, Pam Bondi and everybody at the DOJ. But they're trying. James Comey does not want a trial because he did lie under oath almost certainly. He doesn't want a trial even though he said he did. He's trying to kick out the prosecutor. So is Letitia James. She has a 120-day window to serve as an interim federal prosecutor. So there's a judge, and a separate judge from the court, a judge looking at whether the prosecutor that prosecuted Lindsay Halligan, that prosecuted Comey and Letitia James, whether she was lawfully appointed. I think she'll be found lawfully appointed. However, even if the indictments are thrown out, or the case is thrown out, or the indictment stay, or the prosecutor is removed, these new indictments are going to take place. Comey is going to be indicted under conspiracy statutes within the next couple of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as well as Clinton and others. So stay tuned.
So I take it this doesn't necessarily mean it would be in Washington, D.C., not necessarily in New York, potentially could be filed charges anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, that's what we're told. We're told that the Attorney General has the ability to confer that ability on any everyday federal prosecutor to give that jurisdiction to sort of widen out for the entire United States. And we're being told that this is not a special prosecutor or a special counsel, as we saw with Jack Smith and John Durham and Robert Hur. We're told this is just a federal prosecutor that is being given this temporary jurisdiction to take this before a grand jury. But at this point, it's not being referred to as a special counsel.
Just to complete the OCD of my...
And thank goodness, you don't need a special counsel with this. We had John Durham, the Durham probe compiled all the evidence. They didn't have the ability, really, to level conspiracy statutes. And the trials during the Durham probe, all those people were protected by a system that no longer exists now. All the people that protected them were no longer in power. So the Durham probe was fantastic, and John Durham was fantastic in compiling all the evidence. Also, putting people on the testimony, getting the testimony under oath, putting Clinton, Brennan, and others under oath less than 5 years ago. They still continued and repeated the lies. Okay, they had no clue Trump would become president again. The Durham probe took place and ended when Trump's political, influence was at an all-time low. They had no clue that Trump would return, gain power again, thank God, win every battleground state, the popular vote, the presidency. They had no idea. And that's what John Durham was able to do was very, very important in compiling the evidence for future prosecutions, which are going to take place in the next couple of months.
My curiosity, David, we've covered who, what, and where. I am compelled to ask you then when. Any sense of timeline on this grand jury?
I'm told that it could be months before anything actually happens as far as seeing any sort of results from the grand jury. It's not clear how long grand juries sit in each different jurisdiction. They're impaneled for different amounts of times. I've covered cases before where one grand jury hears some evidence and they're just getting ready to say, we're going to indict, and then their term and their service is over, so another grand jury comes in. I think that in speaking to the people we spoke to, they want to move quickly on this, but it all depends on what the grand jury wants to do and the amount of evidence. But I'm told that any indictments, I want to be clear, if there are indictments, because grand juries can come back and say, we don't think there's enough evidence for indictments, that may take a little while.
Okay.
So they will have all the evidence, Durham probe, all of that stuff, and they'll come out with the indictments in a couple of months officially, but the indictment's essentially already written.
Says Hillary Clinton's campaign financed the Russia hoax. Watch.
This should be a story every outlet in this room should be covering. This is further evidence that Hillary Clinton approved the Russia hoax against President Trump. Her campaign financed it. Again, she approved it. And the FBI and the CIA were both weaponized to, as our director of CIA has said, accelerate this hoax against then candidate and former President Trump. To answer the heart of your question, the president wants to see justice served, and he trusts the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to implement that justice and hold these people accountable.
Florida Congressman Byron Donalds joins me now. Congressman, surely there will be a full-scale investigation of this. That's what you would expect, right?
Absolutely. There needs to be a full-scale investigation. With respect to the Hillary Clinton campaign paying for the Steele dossier and other elements, in the Financial Services Committee, we had a former SEC Commissioner Gary Gensler in committee. And I questioned Mr. Gensler about this very fact, about did he sign off on the checks that paid for the Steele dossier that we now know without any shadow of a doubt was false, a false narrative, concocted materials and evidence for the entire purpose of spying on President Trump's campaign in 2016 and starting this Russia probe, which was, in my view, the real thing that was destroying our democracy. And that's the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, wanting so desperately to defeat Donald Trump that they were using the intelligence community, laundering phony intelligence, and their Hillary Clinton campaign paying for it. And so, yes, it needs to be investigated much more broadly.
If you are in Florida, vote for this man for governor, Byron Donalds. He is fantastic. To my super chat, or to the chat, thank you so very much. I read all the messages. I love you, and I thank you for watching for so long. Yes, the bands that are mentioned, love those bands. Let's continue.
I should tell our audience that Fox Business reached out to Hillary Clinton's team for a response to the story. We have not heard back from that team at this point. Congressman, Biden's longtime aide, Mike Donovan, he just testified in the Biden probe. He says Democrats overreacted to the catastrophic debate. Biden was capable of doing the job. And now Axios is reporting that Donovan was promised $8 million if Biden won the election. What is going on here, Congressman?
I mean, first of all, nobody believes Mr. Donlin. The Democrats were concerned. People, listen, the debate was disastrous. I was there. The American people saw it. But don't forget, I think it was 2 weeks before the debate, Joe Biden went and did this now famed fundraiser with Barack Obama and George Clooney, and it is clear they're having to help him off the stage. Apparently last night, he gave some speech last night, and they literally walk him to the podium for him to start his remarks. Joe Biden has not been mentally capable for quite some time. Mr. Donlin is covering up, quite frankly, because they have a long relationship, and I respect that.
So Byron Donalds is 100% right. Let's continue. Hit subscribe if you're new and go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. It's below in the pinned comment.
Well, Maria, so part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to. John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. Much of that testimony is frankly completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects. Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax.
It's important to realize that we went from John Brennan, in 10 years, we went from John Brennan to John Ratcliffe, who, as congressman, saw all of this. Okay, then he was DNI, I believe, and then now CIA. He is running the same agency that Brennan ran. So that should give you insight into what the indictments are going to be about.
Against the American people and this stain on our country.
That's CIA Director John Ratcliffe indicating indictments potentially could be coming for John Brennan, James Comey, Hillary Clinton. It sounded like he was talking about perjury. NBC reports Barack Obama and his team are trying to stop voters from hearing about Russiagate. They want to bury the story, fearing it's going to hurt Obama's legacy. This is after DNI Tulsi Gabbard said there's evidence Barack Obama ordered up and a new intelligence report in December 2016 after Trump won that falsely claimed Trump colluded with Russia after intelligence said that didn't happen when they knew there was no proof of that. Joining us now from House Judiciary, House Foreign Affairs, Congressman Darrell Issa. Congress, it's great to see you again. What's your take on the Obama side of the aisle reportedly trying to bury the story? Now that America's finally getting the investigation voters wanted, they're saying just move on, just like they're saying that about the cover-up of Joe Biden's decline.
Well, thanks for having me on. And candidly, in my years of doing oversight, some of it, a great deal of it, was President Obama's actions during his administration. And there's no question that he blurred the line between the CIA's foreign operations and domestic. And there are laws against that. And the president needs to be held accountable, at least in the court of public opinion. But in the case of the other individuals, not the crime, but the cover-up that they were part of, and the perjury, as you mentioned earlier, that's likely to be where the charges will come from, and charges will come. I'm confident.
Confident charges will come. So CIA Director DNI made criminal referrals. Attorney General Pam Bondi has a new strike force to look into this. This is the big one, the main new one that's coming in. What's your take on this? That former CIA Director John Brennan debriefed Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Obama's team in August 2016 with James Comey there on the Hillary Clinton campaign's plan to tarnish Trump by hyping Trump-Russia collusion. That the FBI played a role in this before it even launched Crossfire Hurricane. Fox News' Brooke Singman is reporting on this, and that there was a coordinated plan to help the Hillary Clinton campaign stir up Trump-Russia after a Hillary campaign advisor reportedly proposed doing this in July 2016 to attack Trump. Your take on this?
Liz, what we do know is that there were specific orders by President Obama to rethink information in a way that was simply not true and not supported by the initial reporting of the intelligence community. And I think that's where we're going to go all the way to the top, but we have to pass through the CIA director when, in fact, intelligence gets rewritten to suit President Obama's request. That's going to be, again, President Obama cannot be tried for his actions as president. That's been pretty well established. But the people around him absolutely can be held accountable, and history can be made clear that President Obama did, in fact, try to stop, President Trump from becoming president, and then tarnish his administration from day one, even while the transition was underway.
So this is why I say President Obama is almost certainly helping President Trump. Number one, they're both presidents, part of world history, only 47 in a fraternity, a club of world leaders that will be, researched and learned about for centuries and centuries. Okay. But the two political reasons, number one, he circumvents legal liability or criminal liability. Number two, he takes over the Democratic Party completely without any opposition. Let's listen to this.
Released May of 2023. It was 316 pages, but the annexes is what he's talking about. These are things like references and footnotes. There might be some declassified materials in there, legal standards, interview summaries. So that's kind of the next, moment in this story.
Yeah, and I think what people need to realize that, first of all, I think many of us are surprised to find out that dropped only in 2023. I mean, it seems like everything happened 10 years ago. No, the Durham report is actually really recent, and it happened and it came out during Joe Biden's presidency, meaning basically nobody did anything with it. And I think that what we're going to watch here pretty carefully is, what does the media do about all this new information? What do they do about the fact that we are targeting, we meaning the people on the right, Republicans, are targeting those people, Brennan, Comey, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, who are still very much in the public eye, still very much out there as authorities in their party, credible interview contacts, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to here's the New York Times read on what dropped a couple of weeks ago. CIA says its leaders rushed report on Russia interference in 2016 vote. No, that's not really the upshot of all these revelations.
So that's why people don't trust media. The New York Times lied by omission. That was a lie by omission. Was it true that the report was rushed? Not really. No, it wasn't rushed. It was fabricated. And so you could say the word, see, everything is slanted and it's all marketing. Was it really, was it a criminal conspiracy, or was it just shoddy work? Was it rushed? Did they? No, they didn't. The New York Times knows very well that Hillary Clinton purchased a dossier that was illegally filtered into the U.S. government. The New York Times would never allow Rudy Giuliani and President Trump to purchase a dossier that said Hillary was in a Moscow hotel room. BuzzFeed would never publish that type of thing, and the investigative journalists at the New York Times would scour the entire planet to find evidence that the dossier on Clinton or Biden or Harris was not true. So the headlines lie by omission. It's not an overt lie. That's why people don't trust media. 70% of Americans do not trust media. And the reason is because American media is firmly on the side of the Democratic Party. Truth is not what's important. Because if it was truth, the headline would be, dossier is accused of being illegally funneled into the U.S. government. If truth was the issue, people would trust media, because then the New York Times and Washington Post would win Pulitzer Prizes on finding out the graft and bribery within Hunter's laptop, or why Clinton, or how Clinton transferred classified data onto servers, secret servers. But that's not part of the equation. The equation is American media is an extension of the Democratic Party because most journalists are lifelong liberal Democrats, progressives, or just far left. Their political ideology is infused within, unfortunately, the news. So then you have Fox News, but then you have MSNBC, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. I mean, you have an entire. If you have some conservative stations and publications, the Federalist, for example, that are great, but then you have an entire monstrosity that's just going about every day for the Democratic Party. It's a public relations tool of the Democratic Party, in the same way that Jimmy Kimmel and Late Night is.
It's not that they rushed the report, it's that they lied.
Yeah.
And I think, Americans want accountability. I sure hope we get it, because these people have, again, it's not old news. These people continue to lie to the American people about what went down.
Greg.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Liz nailed it. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at the election in 2024, it is about moving forward, but it's also about reconciling the past as well. So the American people need to have information. They need to understand. I think they do understand inherently, but we need to get the facts on the table.
So this is going to happen. And if you watch this channel, you've been telling you for years, hit subscribe if you're new. Clinton being indicted has always been this imaginary fantasy. Like, it's always been viewed by wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats as an impossibility, because Hillary Clinton represents the power and influence within the Democratic Party. Even the progressives, and they couldn't imagine. That's a loss of power to them. The far left, the progressives and far left love Hillary Clinton. They would vote for her tomorrow. They say they don't, but they love Clinton because they like what she represents, which is power, influence, influence within the U.S. government, so much so that she could, and everyone around her, Comey, could funnel a dossier and accuse Trump of being a Russian spy. And all of media would follow up on that without any scrutiny. And that's another reason why people don't trust media. But the issue now is that, well, all that power is dissipated. The DOJ, FBI, CIA, ODNI, all run by people within President Trump's administration who will not allow this to take place and who will hold people legally and criminally accountable. And so the progressives or leftists voting Democrat could never accuse Clinton of an actual crime, because they would be disloyal to their own political side. Loyalty to the Democratic Party is the utmost concern for even the most far left, socialist, communist, progressive. Loyalty to the Democratic Party. If Liz Cheney became nominee, they'd vote for Liz Cheney. You have 3-4 million sub channels that are leftist or progressive or democratic socialist. They'd vote for Liz Cheney if they were told to do so by the Democratic Party, because they're like artificial intelligence robots. They have zero independent thought with that political ideology. But let's continue.
Jury investigation is now underway regarding the Trump-Russia hoax. The media enablers that peddled the lie for years, though, are circling the wagons.
This is extraordinarily stupid. It's extraordinarily stupid on so many counts. Barack Obama had nothing to do with this by anybody's accounts.
We're all for transparency on any potential corruption, right? But this is something that has been combed over for a decade now.
I think they're trying to create the appearance of progress in this investigation without actually making any progress.
They all did their job, right? For the 4 years, 5 years. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's awaiting answers.
I have nothing to do. Pam is doing a great job. I have nothing to do with it.
I love President Trump, but after Butler, Pennsylvania, he has to have everything to do with it.
I will tell you this, they deserve it. I was happy to hear it. I actually read it just like you did. I have nothing to do with it.
Here with reaction is Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. Director Gabbard, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Laura.
There's a report tonight from the Federalist that the DOJ is actually asking you for more documents in its grand jury probe. Is that true? And what are they asking for?
And let me explain that comment. After Butler, Pennsylvania, President Trump's life was almost taken. A firefighter, his life was taken defending his family. President Trump did not have a vice president at that time. J.D. Vance was not chosen by Trump yet. Nikki Haley could have been or would have been the nominee. She had the most delegates. Could you imagine Nikki Haley and Chris Christie as her vice president, or Liz Cheney, or whatever? It would have been 4 years of Harris, and that's it. I mean, then, of course, J.D. Vance, hopefully Rubio would regroup, but it would be a different ballgame completely. They wouldn't have the political momentum at all. President Trump is not the only thing. President Trump's populist movement is about limiting endless wars, enforcing immigration laws, bringing manufacturing back so communities that suffer from outsourcing can have jobs and alleviate poverty. Okay, all the things that Democrats don't like. But if President Trump's life was taken that day, nobody would be held accountable. If President Trump's life was taken, nobody would be held accountable. And they could continually fund dossiers. There would be a dossier against there would be the Mitt Romney dossier. There'd be a dossier written with every political candidate, every conservative, every Republican. And it would be published by the next BuzzFeed. And the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN would be like, well, could it be true? Who knows? And nobody would be held accountable. There would be new Red Scare, McCarthy era scare tactics, and the same loyal, obedient left would march in lockstep and do nothing about it. You know, the Democrats, you grow up as a liberal, learning the McCarthy era was bad, and then they recreate another McCarthy era. Then they protested the Vietnam War, and now they're all for all the wars from Bush and President Obama. So it's like, it's really, the left is really about feeling good or feeling moral, oftentimes at the expense of actually being moral. But let's continue.
Now.
That is true, Laura, and I just want to point out how important this is, that Attorney General Pam Bondi, through the Department of Justice, is taking this necessary first step toward accountability, which is essential for the American people to begin to have any kind of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. I met with the Department of Justice prosecutors today, and yes, they are committed to leaving no stone unturned as they conduct this grand jury investigation and find the truth. Obviously, we've already handed over the documents that we've declassified and released publicly over the last few weeks. They have more questions, and they're going to be really taking a deep dive into this again, looking everywhere to find the truth and conduct this very serious investigation.
You heard the media reaction, and a lot of these same people were just buying lock, stock, and barrel what was sold to them during the 2016 election. But they're essentially saying this is all old news. This is such a stupid political move on their part. Into that, you say?
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents a couple of weeks ago. They tried to ignore it. When they realized that they weren't going to get away with this, that this story was going to continue breathing life, we continued releasing new documents. Then they decided, oh, we'll take this approach of say, oh, this is nothing. There's nothing really to see here. This is bizarre. This is a conspiracy. These are the things that they do over and over and over again. And the next step they will take when they feel that they are not succeeding in getting rid of this truth that we have uncovered for the American people, then they will go down the route of we must destroy and smear and attack the credibility of those who are delivering the truth to the American people. They've done this to President Trump. They've done this to me. They've done this to so many different people, once again, who are trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Now, Director, you said there was irrefutable evidence that Obama was the mastermind of this intelligence manipulation and the perpetuation of the Russia hoax. What is that irrefutable evidence for our viewers tonight?
You know, as you were playing those clips of these people like Morning Joe seemingly befuddled, saying that by no account is any of this true, I would challenge them to see if they've actually read the documents, every single page of the documents that we've released over the last couple of weeks. If not, go to odni.gov, It's all right there for anyone to see. And those who go in and read this will see how President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying per the president's direction, per the president's order.
In trial and on the witness stand, they will all blame President Obama, which is why I keep saying I think that President Obama somehow, some way, will or is helping President Trump indict everyone from Brennan to Hillary Clinton. He circumvents, number one, he circumvents criminal liability. Number two, he saves or, helps, redefine his legacy. Number three, he controls the Democratic Party. He takes full control of the Democratic Party without the I'm with her crowd. Anyway, God bless you all. Hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. It's below in the pinned comment and description. Subscribe there. We'll have a lot more new content there today and from here on out. Subscribe there. Watch the latest segment. I'll be back about 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern this evening for the live stream here. God bless you all. To the people who've been watching for a long time, I love you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, everybody. And God bless you all.